All right, so let's just dive into it. Today, you probably saw from my emails, people are hopping on, more people hopping on. That's good. Chris is going to talk about their exciting preliminary work, or ongoing work, I should say, not preliminary work, about this nice novel microRNA involved in mitochondrial relation SARS-CoV-2 infection. So, the work from Eric and Chris and Veronica and other folks here. Yeah, keep threatening to have a in-person meeting, but the key is to have the sponsors. So, if anyone knows any sponsor, I mean, I guess people are tired of COVID. That's the issue, but we could change this meeting type format to include long COVID and other subjects like space biology or cancer and other things. But we could talk about that later. And again, there's some papers. Not from last meeting. There's not any newer papers, but maybe expecting some papers, hopefully, to be accepted soon, to be adding to this list. Yes. Hot mics, please mute your microphones. Okay, good. So yeah, just some updates. As I said, Al, I think he's busy, but I think maybe after the new year, he's gonna start talking about these case reports. I know some people were interested in participating in some of these case reports that Al had discussed. And I sent an email a few weeks ago, a month ago. But if you're interested in knowing about them, email me and I could get you in touch with Al again. And the long COVID group will probably try to start up beginning of next year, January 2023. And again, we have a YouTube channel where these updates are put up there. Not the talks, but the updates are put up on there. All right, so let's go into the news. So I want to give enough time for Chris to talk about his exciting work. So just a brief 10-minute update I'm going to give on COVID news. And the people in the U.S., if you're not aware, I saw this yesterday. I ordered my free kits. Obviously, we know there's a lot of cases rising, not just in the U.S., but everywhere in the world. And the government, again, is offering free home tests. So if you go to this covid.gov/tests, you can order your free tests. So that's, I guess, the one public announcement for the people in the U.S. But as we know, the bad news is why they're offering this is cases are rising everywhere. This is an article from Boston showing the wastewater, so I'm going to show you that data in a second. And then obviously what we've been reading in the news about China, it's been estimated about 800 million could probably get infected this winter, which is pretty striking. And you can see that the reports and I'll show you that data in a second too, were for the number of cases rapidly rising in China since they got rid of all restrictions there. There's this paper that came out a couple of days ago in Nature. It's a paper that actually is talking about the actual, most likely deaths that have occurred, and they use basically, as opposed to the COVID reported deaths, because a lot of countries might have misreported or they don't report properly. So what they've done is look at the excess global deaths and per country and region, and then they've actually calculated and related to COVID deaths. So this is a plot from this paper showing countries that, so this is the cumulative reported COVID deaths is the red, but the excess deaths are compared to previous years before COVID, that's what they're comparing to, are the purple ones. So you can see like countries like India, Russia, and Indonesia are vastly underreporting their deaths. And this is where, countries you would expect that are reporting accurately, like the U.S., Brazil, and a lot of European countries are reporting accurately. This doesn't attribute to that big increase we see. So it's been reported 5 million, but the excess deaths and what people are estimating according to this paper is actually 14 million in fact. So that's kind of sobering news. One interesting part of this paper, when they looked around, countries like Africa have been countries in Africa have been notoriously, or not notoriously, but they have had a lack of reporting due to it's been harder to report some places in some regions. So this is what this is showing, where the cases actually reported in Africa is very much underreported. So they're estimating a lot higher deaths there. I guess that might not be any shock to anyone. So again, the cases are rising in England. We see the cases are going up, although I'll show you in a second with the numbers and case numbers. It doesn't really reflect how it's going up, which I'm not sure why. But the news articles are saying the hospitalizations are on the rise. This was an interesting paper, or news article and papers that have come out in the past few months that I hadn't seen, but figured these are preprints. But there's a New York Times article that came out yesterday talking about coronavirus may spread from corpses, or in the length of time. I have to read these preprints to know, but it's after the person dies. But what's interesting, these are the two preprints they referred to. Live mics here. But these two preprints they refer to is basically this one here from these Japanese studies they've done, where they've taken from corpses and looked at titers from the different organs or the lung. And they've seen here, for example, 13 days later, the viral replication still active, and it could potentially transmit from the corpse. And then there's a hamster study this other Japanese group had done, which is interesting. They took a infected hamster, sacrificed it, and put it in a cage with in like a netted, controlled environment, in a cage with hamsters that are not infected. And then they found out that some of these hamsters do actually get infected from that corpse. It's a preprint again, so preprints can change, but it's an interesting news article there. I hadn't heard of before this case. There's, of course, the new variants around the world is pretty uniform. It's either BQ.1.1 or XBB now, another subvariant. There's this paper that just came out in Cell that maybe some of you have seen. I just saw it the other day. And it's talking about as the title says, how the antibody evasion between these two variants are pretty prevalent. This is from the figures from the papers, the graphical abstract, but this little figure down here on the bottom, figure 1b, shows how much of how different these two variants are, and how much it's actually spread apart from the original Omicron variants. So it's interesting to see that phylogenetic difference trees. And then this is talking this plot here, for example, in the graphical abstract here, is showing the neutralization by the sera. As you can see, XBB.1 actually is a lot worse, or it does a lot better job evading your immune system than BQ.1.1, which is concerning. And this is the whole point of this paper, saying even with the bivalent boosters, these guys, these two new variants, do a very good job at evading your immune system and getting people infected. Although the boosters might prevent severe illness, which is good, but still, as these paper shows, this is another sub kind of a antigenic map of the variants with other coronaviruses and the breakthroughs and so on. But this is an interesting paper to read if people are interested in that, if you haven't already. This is another paper that came out a couple of days ago that we discussed yesterday. I found it yesterday at a meeting, and during our inflammation meeting, I shared this paper. But this is I'm sure a lot of you have seen this, but it was a paper showing it's related to long COVID. I mean, it's not directly addressing long COVID in the paper, but it's related to that. It's basically saying that in autopsies done on human brains and the human body, they saw that within 230 days after, these patients that died 30 days after they were initially infected. And what they found was that in the majority, if you haven't already read this paper, in the majority of the organs, you can find the viral RNA fragment, SARS-CoV-2 fragments in there. They're not replicating, but it's RNA fragment. So their claim is, this viral RNA fragment can contribute to potential long COVID symptoms, since it might be a persistent kind of insult or injury to the body, causing consistent factors to be related to what these fragments might promote. It's a short paper, so take a look, but they didn't go too much into the biology and other things, but they just did a really good job at mapping and characterizing where the RNA viral fragments or SARS-CoV-2 fragments show up around the body. So take a look at this paper. Going through this quick, just because I'm going to give Chris enough time to talk. Here's another report that came out from the CDC related with long COVID. This is on the CDC site, and this CNN article talks about it. But it's relating it's relating long COVID deaths, which you don't hear about as much as the acute COVID deaths. But it's an interesting report that the CDC folks released, characterizing the deaths associated with long COVID and splitting up between sex or ethnicity or age. And you can see the differences that occur. They saw, for example, white people, Caucasians actually have a higher death rate for long COVID. Hispanic and white people, that's what it said here in the report. And then one of the highest among death rates are the Hispanic American Indian or Alaskan Natives, have, for whatever reason. The biology they don't go into because they don't know the biology why, but that's the reasons. But it's an interesting case or report, I should say, from the CDC to read if you're interested. And then here's another couple of papers that have come out recently too on long COVID. One is maybe some good news, maybe some possible ways to relieve long COVID. So there's this paper that come out. It's a small focused, like basically epidemiological paper where, the clinicians interviewed people and figure out after, step-by-step increase in physical activity, how it might improve their health and get rid of long COVID symptoms. And long story short, they basically show that it does have maybe a potential impact on helping reduce long COVID symptoms if you have constant, slow increase, incremental physical activity constantly happening if you're experiencing long COVID. Here's another paper from folks at Yale group that they talked about potential new treatment. Some of you might already know about NAC, and it's been in the radiation biology field. It's used a lot, and also in TBI. So they were testing it with long COVID and see how it improves cognitive deficiencies due to long COVID, and they see some positive improvement of this based on their experiments here. It's a small study, almost like a case report. 12 patients. So take it with a grain of salt, meaning it's to 12 patients, and here's kind of break down the highlights from this paper. But the overall theme is potentially this could be something that might help, and further investigation is needed probably. Okay, so that was the quick news update. There's this Ask Long COVID dashboard that I was bringing up. This for the U.S. The variant distribution, I like this one for the U.S. It shows how the variant. This guy Raj, he's has a nice dashboard, and it's not just the U.S. He has it all over the world. Kind of gives you the distribution of the variants, and you can see, of course, BQ.1.1, the XBB as we're expecting, rising everywhere. The wastewater in the U.S., we see the rise happening. It's not just when you see this nationally, the different regions, of course, might have different impact. Like, for example, Middlesex County, where I am, there's a huge spike now happening, as the reports are saying. And now they're actually showing you the distribution of the variants. The BQ.1 includes BQ.1.1. And then BA.5 actually here includes XBB, I think, is here. But you can see how the wastewater is showing BQ.1.1 is really taken over. This is the distribution of the variants in the U.S. from the CDC tracker. You can see, again, BQ.1.1. It's pretty much squashed BA.5 and it's gone. And XBB is starting to come up too, as you see in the regional differences you can see here. You can see where the Northeast, where I am, and people in New York and Philadelphia's here. But even Philadelphia's or Pennsylvania, it's close by. So the close trend. So you can see BQ.1.1 and XBB are dominant things and quickly taking over. People should be hopefully careful during the holiday season. Globally, it's about the same. This you can't make much here, but if I kind of break it down between some of the main regions, like Europe, put all the European countries together, U.S., South America, and then the Asian ones. You can see Asia's really spiking here with case numbers. U.S., Europe, and South America are going up accordingly, but this kind of dwarfs this in this case. And then hospitalization, not every country reports that, but you can see the U.S. Is up here. The countries that do is winning that. I guess it's not winning, but they're number one with hospitalizations according to the countries that do report, compared to South Korea. And deaths, of course, are associated with that are rising too. Like places like Hong Kong, you see that definitely what we're expecting. Germany, I'm just going through the individual countries to give you kind of a highlight. Like BQ.1.1 was first, I think, in the European community, was really prominent in Germany first, so you can see these spikes. But then they're going back down, but you can see now they're going back up again. So it seems like that trend going down is no more. France, since we got Eric and Chris here from France. So France, unfortunately for their country, the hospitalizations are going up just like the US and everywhere else. UK is interesting. Either they're not reporting well, or even though this is what I mentioned earlier, the news articles are saying hospitalizations increase, but the reports are not showing that. So there's a disconnect there somewhere. I'm not sure where. Yeah, but you see the cases are going up. But when you read the news articles, they say hospitalizations are going up. So maybe the hospitalizations could be due to like influenza rather than COVID. I'm not sure, but it's not reflecting what they're reporting. U.S. we've already been over. South America and Brazil. I just show Brazil. Brazil tends. South American countries tend to follow what happens in Brazil pretty dominantly, but you can see the case numbers are going up. No hospitalizations reporting or anything like that. They usually don't, but the deaths are still fairly low. Japan, as I said, it's one of the Asian countries that are. You can see this huge spike in new cases in the ICU and new deaths, which is unfortunate. And these are countries like Japan and South Korea that follow, mask regulations fairly well, at least outdoors. But then when you go indoors, they don't wear masks because they dine indoors a lot. South Korea, same thing. Although their spike from the initial Omicron's not there yet, so that's good. Australia is having this increase also, and then South Africa is still interesting for me that it has no cases. But one theory that came up last week from one member said they're doing a very close off travel restrictions and not to the country due to COVID. But people are familiar with it. When I was looking into it this morning, I found this South African site where they report stuff, and from Reuters, they have said that they're no longer being updated, and this is so I'm wondering if this is actually the case, because when you look at some news articles and stuff, they actually do say they do have COVID cases going up. It's not zero, and whether they just stop reporting. So if anyone has any insight on that, because I don't know any collaborators or scientists in South Africa yet. People know people there. Please let me know. So I'd like to have them part of the group and let us know their insight down there. But I'm guessing it's probably they've stopped reporting since July, you see here, 2022. So the data's just not there. Oh, sorry. So what? Someone about to say something? Oh, no. Okay. And yeah, so that's a quick run through. I want to give Chris enough time. I don't know if there's any quick questions related to anything I presented.